Alright, g'day guys, and welcome back to the first video on my channel in quite a while. And now, the first part of this video is going to be a bit of an explanation, a bit of a what's to come. There will be a timestamp in the description down below if you want to skip all this and get on to what you can see on your screen, which is going to be my Little Cup draft analysis. But first, a bit of an explanation. So, I think it's a couple weeks now, wow. But yeah, a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it's just a week, I don't know. I had my laptop, which it's my computer, I do all my work on, uni work, like YouTube stuff, you name it, it's all on there. And it decided to go up into flames, quite literally. Which meant that the video that I had recorded, which was another one of my Indigo games, that is long gone now. And because Showdown ties all your teams to the cookies, and I'm now on a new computer, which yes, I had to go out and buy. Good fun, yay, spending a lot of money. It now meant that I don't have any of my old Indigo teams saved. I didn't save them in pastes, which I should have done. Should have saved them in Discord or to like some files where I could retrieve them. But I don't have that, and so for me, already getting a postcom of a league that was like 7 weeks ahead of where I was a bit sort of, I can see how that wouldn't be engaging for an audience. But now, without me being able to talk about the teams, then I think I'm just going to can that season there. Indigo Season 3, just for you guys wondering, I missed out on playoffs by 2 wins. I finished the season at 4-8. I mean, not a great run. We had a middle part of the season where a couple of guys in, well, I'd say in my front office, but really my buddy Scott's front office, that I kind of hijacked a room in there and was like, please help me, I need this. Had a bit of a run in the middle there where we strung a couple of wins together, but ultimately there are a couple of holes in my draft, and I just wasn't up to playing that level of Indigo this season. But it's great to be back into doing regular draft leagues. So Indigo Season 3 will be getting uploaded on this channel. The playoffs are just about to start, which means I think draft will be around the corner in about a week or so, maybe a bit less, and then you'll see a draft analysis video coming on your screens later on. So what's to come? I have a few leagues coming up. I have, obviously you can see the Little Cut one, APA Indigo, which I've talked about. I'm also a part of my good buddy John Jr. and Obo. They run the NCP Showdown League, which I will be a part of next season. That's going to be good fun. A lot of good guys in there. Very excited for that. And also, a league I haven't decided whether I'm uploading or not yet. I probably will be uploading. Is my good buddy N is running a Cap League. For those of you who don't know, it's the creator Pokemon is Cap. So Smogon and a couple of guys a while back created a bunch of mons. I think there's about 20 or so, including pre-evolutions and all that. So we've done a league with those. That's going to be super fun. Probably will be uploading that just because of how much fun it is using different mons, with obviously Gen 8 just around the corner. But yeah, that's what's coming. You should be getting about 3 or 4 videos a week, depending on what leagues I upload, if I have any more projects come up. But yeah, so now that that's done, for you guys that have skipped all that rubbish that I've spoken about, this is where you'll catch up. Now we're getting into this league. Now, the APA Showdown Little Cup League is one that Panther has been very gracious in allowing me to be one of the admins for. Little Cup is one of my favourite formats. I love using the baby mons, and yeah, it's great fun. There's a lot of great guys in this season. We've got Panther himself playing, I'd like to Sticks from the Token Minorities. We've got some great battlers in Harry and Scott, the other 2 admins, who had a really great first season, Matt O'Shea, and a couple other names. I'll link everyone who has a channel down below. I think a fair few guys are uploading. I put together the graphics that you see on the screen. Nothing too special, but nice enough. I borrowed some Elite Four Dan's graphics, and hopefully we'll get a decent amount of uploads for it this season. But getting into the draft analysis, and because I played last season, and I finished, well, I finished in a playoff spot and got knocked out first round of playoffs. But one of the guys who didn't want his franchise, which for those of you who don't know, if you finish top 4, you get the reward of picking a tier 3 or tier 4 mon from your team to keep and put on your roster for the next season. And so one of the guys, Mayo, who didn't want to keep his franchise, he's like, I want to throw up with a new team. He decided to give it to me because I was actually the only one that beat him in the regular season. And that was the first one that came onto our team, and it is very appropriately our mascot, well, our baby mascot, Lily. Now, this thing is a gun. It saved me so many times in the first season. It is very, very defensive, but also that 61 special attack is nothing to slouch at. It's a rock grass type, so it covers... It's sort of that middle ground type. It is weak to fighting, which is a big prevalence in Little Cup, something we'll have to patch up later. But it has a great ability in Storm Drain. And Storm Drain is, yeah, okay, we're starting off our draft with a rock type that's immune to water. And which is phenomenal. This thing can be both physically and specially bulky. You can run... Look, there's all sorts of things you can run with this thing. It gets access to Stab Ancient Power, which means you can cheese some boosts and win some games where you weren't really going to win them before. It's a rocker. It's just a great tier 3 mon to start and build your team around, because it can fill a lot of roles. It can check a lot of specific mons that you need it to check, and if you get another one or two bulky mons to go around it to patch its weaknesses, like its fire weakness, like its ice weakness and its fighting weakness, then it can be a great member to any team. And it was a great place to start. And so moving on, this was the first actual pick of the draft, and I had second pick, and I was almost a little disappointed that I got this high, because there was one mon that I wanted to try out, and I knew it's not a top 5 pick, so I'm like, okay, maybe if I get like a middle or towards the back wheel, then I could pick up this and something else, and have a nice core to go. But I actually got second pick, and I went, you know what? It's not a top 5 pick, but I want to try it anyway. So I grabbed Vulpix. And Vulpix is normally banned in Little Cup, but what it does is it sets the sun. And it sets the sun. It's got a decent speed tier. It hits the 17 speed tier. Its HP, attack, and defense are kind of abysmal. Its SpDef is alright. You can run an Eviolite. Oh, that reminds me. Before I go any further, I'm going to mention a couple of things with this league. It is a 20-person league, and in Little Cup, that means that things are going to be a bit sparse. So you obviously have to draft 1 tier 1, 2 tier 2s, 2 tier 3s, tier 4, and then 4 free picks, as you can see down the side of the screen there. You also get 200 points to do those free picks. Tier 1's worth 80 points, tier 2's 60, tier 3's 40, and tier 4 is 20. A couple of rules that we added into this league. Baton Pass is completely banned. That was a rule so that, well, it was lining up with what Little Cup Showdown, Smogon is like. They've outlawed Baton Pass now, and it also means that we can allow and re-tier another few things, so it could be a bit more of a shaken up league. And another one of the rules is you can only have, it's a 2 item clause, so you can only have 2 Eviolites, 2 Scarfers, 2 Life Orbs, of anything on any 6 for the match. And the third one is, looking at the points, it is a possibility to get with your free points 2 tier 1s, 2 tier 4s, but we decided against allowing that because there aren't that many tier 1s, and with a 20-person league, if people started getting 3 tier 1s, they're going to run out very quickly. So he said, even if you've got the points for it, you're not allowed to grab a 3rd tier 1. But other than that, there's a couple of mons that have sort of little clauses with them. I'll explain those if we run into any, but I don't think I drafted any of those mons. So yeah, moving on to our second pick after all that. I grabbed Meowth. And this is another returning member from my Season 1 team. And I love Meowth in Little Cup. It is one of my favourite mons to use. Looking at his stats, you probably don't think he's that great. He's got 45 attack, 40 special attack with abysmal defenses. He's fast as hell. 19 speed tier, which is great in Little Cup. There's only 3 mons from memory that outspeed that in Diglett, Elekid, and Voltorb, I think. But yeah, so Meowth is great fun. Its main selling point is Technician, which multiplies all moves that are base 60 or below by 1.5. So like Fake Out is now base 60 power. You're getting stab on that. And just touching on Fake Out, that's its other selling point, priority. This thing with a Life Orb, a stab Fake Out into a stab Feint can do so much. And then it also, because of Technician, it can run hidden powers that hit 90 base power, moves like Shockwave and Water Pulse that it also gets. And its special attack is only a little lower than its attack, and the way that Little Cup stats work, it can actually hit quite hard. Like it can OHKO on Onyx with Water Pulse. It can do a lot. It gets such a great move pool. There are so many sets you can run. This thing gets nasty plot, for God's sake. Like, I don't know why, but it gets nasty plot. So this thing is a priority monster. It can come in, and if you've got hazards up and your opponent's team is low enough, you can just come in and claim 6 kills with Feint, because it's got higher priority than things like Sucker Punch, than other things like that, and it breaks through Protect, so this thing can just clean your games, and I love it, and it's going to get a lot of use through this season. Moving on to my 4th pick, we were talking about patching some weaknesses, getting another bulky mon to go with Lileep, and I was also like, you know what counters weather? And I was like, that's opposing weather. I'm like, well, why don't I draft that as well? And we've got our boy Hippopotas, and I love this guy because 1, he's so derpy, 2, because base 68 HP, 78 defense, and 72 attack. This thing is a physical wall, and it hits hard. It's a rocker. It gets reliable recovery and slack off, Earthquake, and it can also do some other fun things. It can set the sand if I'm not bringing sun that week. It can chip things down. So something's coming in, it's taking Stealth Rocks. If I've got those up, it can take sand. You've got that priority from Meowth, Fake Out into Feint. Like, not much is getting through that. And so I was like, you know what? If sun doesn't have a great matchup, then I can bring sand, or I can not bring any weather at all. I can also bring this thing with Sand Force if I want to run Vulpix and don't want to be cancelling my own weather. So I was like, it's a great tier 2 to have, because one of the things I had with my team last season is I had 2 mons that were bulky, and which was great. Like, don't get me wrong, Little Cup is basically hyper offense the tier, but you also need something that can live hits. And so if, for example, I had something that matched up well against my Lileep, I had this one of them on, and if it didn't check it, then, well, I was getting kind of swept. So yeah, moving on to my next pick, we've got my 5th pick, which was Stuffle. And this was a mon I hadn't used before, which is sort of a theme for the most of this draft. And I needed a fighting type. And I was originally looking at Machop, because that thing gets Dynamic Punch with no guard, and I was like, whew, that could be nice. And that got taken a couple picks before me, and I was like, damn it. So I grabbed Stuffle, because I didn't know a lot about this guy. Scott, Harry, and a couple other guys in the front office were like, you know what, you should grab this. I think even Panther was like, yeah, Stuffle's quality. And I was like, okay, I haven't used this. And now looking at it, the 70 HP, 75 attack, those are pretty decent stats. He hits 15 speed tier, which is sort of like, you're going to outspeed anything slow and fat, but you're not really going to outspeed those 16, 17, 18 speed tier mons. So I'm like, that's right. And then I remember this thing gets Fluffy, which basically doubles its physical defense. Which means if you run an Eviolite on this. So Eviolite boosts your defense by 1.5 times. And then you got Fluffy, which boosts it again. So this thing's, like, you look at it, base 70 HP is good for Little Cup. Base 50 defense is like sort of mid-tier. But then you can stack Fluffy on that. And this thing is another very physically bulky mon. But it also dishes out massive attacks with its 75 attack, and it also gets Swords Dance. So if your opponent's team has a pretty physical roster, you can run this thing with a bit of bulk, throw up a Swords Dance, and then just take hits and like claim lives back. So it's like this thing looks fun, and I'm glad I drafted it, and hopefully it's going to put in some work this season. Moving on, we have our 6th pick, which is going to be Spearow. Now, flying type is probably, I mentioned fighting was one of the most spammable types in Little Cup. Flying is probably the other one. Like, not a lot resists it, resists flying, and the likes of steals, the rocks that do, not many of them get reliable recovery. And so I was like, I needed a flyer. I knew what tier 1 and tier 2 I wanted for my free picks, so I could only afford a tier 3 or 4. I was looking at some of the ones in tier 3 that I like, that I was sort of debating, and Picky Peck was the one that stood out there, but that was on my team last season, and I'm like, I've already got 2, I don't really want a third mon from my team last season, so I'm like, you know what, this mon, spoiler, it won the tier 4 MVP last season. This thing did a lot of work. It's got 17 speed tier, 60 attack, it is frail as you like. 31 special attack is, I mean, look, it could be worse. It's a tier 4. I think it's a pretty good tier 4, which is why I grabbed it round 6, because a lot of flyers were going. But I was like, you know what, this thing can do some work. It's also my first and, well, spoilers, only form of hazard removal. But I mean, teams don't really run hazard removal in Little Cup. There's like 1 or 2 is probably standard for most teams, because the mons that get hazard removal aren't exactly super top tier, unless you drafted Vullaby, which then you've got like the best removal in the game. But yeah, so moving on to my 7th pick, I decided to grab the tier 2 mon that I wanted, and this is Shellos. And I needed a water type, and I needed sort of something else that was specially bulky, because I've got a couple of physically bulky mons, and I don't know, I saw Shellos sitting in tier 2, and I'm like, this thing has some great well-rounded stats. It's got 76 HP, it's got 62 SPDF, 57 special attack, which is kind of decent. It can hit a 14 speed tier, which for like a bulky mon isn't the worst. But it also has Storm Drain, which is like, yep, you're another water immunity. So against my Vulpix, which is one of my, well, it's my pick. It was my first pick, so obviously I want that thing to do well, claim a lot of lives this season, and I've got 2 water absorb, water immunities. So what are you going to do? And yeah, so getting back on track. This thing can live hits. It's got its other phenomenal ability. Well, 2 others. It gets Sand Force, so I could bring an offensive Shellos with Hippopotas, and this thing could claim lives. And it also has Sticky Hold. So if I run an Eviolite on this thing, what's a knockoff? Knockoffs are just like, yeah, look, you're not knocking off this Eviolite. You're not knocking off my Berry Juice or my Z move, because it is an open Z format. Yeah, so that's just 3 phenomenal abilities, some really well-rounded stats, and reliable recovery, and a water type, a bulky water in any format is just great. And so I was like, yeah, why not? Now pick 8, we're up to now. I grabbed Mime Jr. because I needed a fighting resist. Looking at my team, and the aforementioned Scarfed Machop with Dynamic Punch, that kind of just 6-0'd me at this point. And I was like, you know what, this thing quad resists fighting. Yeah, it's only got 45 defense and 20 HP, but it has 90 SPDF, which I think is actually the highest stat that we've seen so far out of my 8 mons. It's got 70 special attack. It hits a 16 speed tier. It has Technician, it has Filter, and it has Synchronize, I think. So you're probably not going to be running... You might run the Synchronize, switch into some Toxics or some Willows, and then fire one straight back. It gets Fake Out, Technician as well. So Technician, Fake Out, even with that 25 attack, is just that nice little bit of chip on something that's a bit more frail. You know, so finish something off that's only got a few hit points left, a Sasha or something. And then you got 70 special attack, which Technician hidden powers, like anything that, any type that isn't fairy, this can hit like a big chunk if you're running it. It also gets access to Berry Juice and Recycle, which is fun, like that 90 SPDF. 20 HP means you can run max HP, and it only hits 21, so that means, well, if you live and you pop your Berry Juice, you're always back to full. You can run a lot of SPDF investments so that things like You can tank hits pretty well from other specially offensive mons that aren't going to be super effective. And even if they are and you really need it or something, you can run filter to take that little bit less damage. And so yeah, it was a really well-rounded mon. And just looking at that face, like this thing's adorable. And I said, why not? It's a great tier 3 to have on my team. It's a Psychic. Psychic's a great type. And yeah, why not? And speaking of, now, at this point, I knew what other tier 1 I wanted. And anyone who's played this format before is sitting there yelling it into their screen. They know exactly what it is. So I decided, because I was second pick, it come back to the wheel. I knew what... I was talking to Panther. I knew he couldn't take... He was pick 1, by the way. I knew he couldn't take my tier 1. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to grab my tier 4 now. And I grabbed Poochyena. And look, at this point, there wasn't much left in this tier. Looking at its base stats, it has 1 stat over 35, which is not great. It only hits a 14 speed tier. But this thing, it gets rattled and it gets quick feet. So this thing's all about going fast. And so for those who don't know, quick feet, if you're statist, like burnt, toxic, burnt, poison, etc., your speed is, you basically get +1 speed. And so that means this thing's 14 speed tier now becomes 21 speed tier, and it outspeeds the whole non-scarfed metagame. And it also rattled is the same thing. If you get flinched, I think it is, from memory, then you get +1 speed. And so this thing's like 55 attack is not the worst. Like, if they don't have a 20 speed point mon, I can run Adamant, get that little bit more of a boost. And this thing gets decent moves. It gets like Sucker Stab, Sucker Punch, Crunch, Play Rough, Fire Fang. Like, it's a fast Taunter if it's statist. And like, this is, for a tier 4, it's just a nice little mon to have. Like, it's not going to come to every game. It's not going to do anything every time it comes. But it's something they've got to think about. Like, if they've got a mon that's trying to spike stack me, then I can thread this in, taunt it, get a nice fast taunt off, and then maybe hit it hard with something. Because like Flame Orb, well, you're probably not going to run Flame Orb because you're running a physical set and you don't want to have that damage taken off you. But like Toxic Orb, because Toxic, the way it works in Little Cup, like, it doesn't actually rack up as much damage as quickly because of how the HP stats work. So yeah, I was like, you know what, this is pretty decent. And then the last pick of our draft, which everyone by now has probably guessed, is Bellsprout. This thing is here to claim lives. Pairing it with the Sun from Vulpix, this thing has Chlorophyll, so it can hit 28 speed. It outspeeds most Scarfers. Actually, it outspeeds every Scarfer except those base 20 mons, which are like the likes of Diglett, Elekid, and Voltorb. And I think we have pretty good answers for all 3 of those mons on our roster. 75 attack, 70 special attack. This thing can be run either side. It gets the likes of Solar Beam, Weather Ball, Sludge Bomb, Power Whip. Like, it's a lot of coverage. Even like hidden powers on these things, base 70 special attack can chunk mons. Yeah, look, its defenses at 35 and 30 are a bit abysmal. 50 HP isn't too bad. Like, the way EVs work, you can often afford to run a little bit of HP, because you will have that left over, or defense. But yeah, so outside the Sun, this thing is like, it's still alright. It outspeeds some walls. It, like, obviously Weather Ball and Solar Beam are going to be a bit but this thing is here to claim lives, and I'm so excited to use it. And yeah, so that's going to be our draft analysis. We'll be getting back to you next week with our week 1 game, and we play a big boy first up. We play someone who's going to be very scary, and I'm hoping to get off to a good start. I'm not going to spoil who it is, but yeah, I'll leave links to everyone who's in this league down in the description below. Go check them out. Show them some love, although if you're at my channel, you've probably seen them first. But for now, that is me signing off. See you guys.